6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I followed it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
I can move you. Making reveal. Making reveal.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the 59th episode of Rank and Review. This week, your host and random Canadian with returning guest Susie Cook are going to look at sci-fi scares, madness, darkness, and the end of the world. Yes, we have 6 dark science fiction movies. And every episode I warn my listeners that there could be spoilers and there could be coarse language. But this episode in particular, I think a lot of these movies hang on their twists. And in order to discuss the movie, we had to sort of talk about those twists. If you have not seen any of the movies on the list and you are worried about spoilers, do not press on until after you've seen the movies. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy an interesting, if combative, episode of Rank and Review. Few notes about the sound. This room, Susie sounds fantastic, but there was a little bit of an echo in the room, and I'm a little soft. I did what I could to help with that, but I hope you can forgive a little bit less quality than usual this week on Rank and Review. But see, it's a learning experience. If you have any feedback to give me, constructive or otherwise, please do so by writing rankandreview@gmail.com. That's rankandreview@gmail.com. And seek out the show on Facebook, seek it out on iTunes, and tell that other movie nerd in your life about Rank and Review. Okay, that's all. I won't bother you any further. I hope you enjoy Sci-Fi Scares 4. Okay, so here we are. We're kind of squatting in Lynn Cook's house. Hi, Lynn. She's not listening to this. We could say anything we want. And Susie Cook returns for her second exciting installment of Rank and Review. Thank you so much, Susie, for being here.
My pleasure.
And you have selected a quite dark selection of science fiction movies. And I'm curious what attracted you to that.
Well, I knew that 2 of the movies in the bunch were some of my favorites.
Nice.
And that's why I was interested in reviewing this particular bunch.
And the rest sort of came along with them?
Exactly.
Well, okay, it'll be interesting to find out which of those 2 are your personal favorites, because I have 2 personal favorites on this list as well. So much so that actually the top 2 was a real tough one for me.
Really?
A real tough one. We'll see. Are you coming in confident? Do you think we're going to be going 6 for 6 or 0 for 6?
Well, there is a trend, 0 for 6, and we'll see if I can repeat.
You're going to try to get 0 for 6?
No, I'm just going to rank them as I see them, and in discussion with Jeremy, my husband, J. Adrian, he... he predicts that we might actually go 0 for 6 again, given what he knows about my choices. And you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You had a little bit of an inside track, but you're not trying to cook the books. I have my list written down. It's in the breast pocket of my jacket. There'll be no cheating tonight for me. There's been a couple of times where the list has been so close that I almost wish I could flip-flop it. A lot of times the middle movies I'm not as passionate about as the top or bottom, right? But and we need winners.
Yeah.
I mean, I love me some Karen Giese, But she's held the title for a long time. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. Or she could double down. I guess that would be exciting too. But I feel like it's time for a win, don't you?
Oh well, yeah. No, no. I'm fairly certain 6 for 6 is going to be really difficult. I think that what we enjoy in movies, not going to happen.
Okay.
So.
Well, it'll be interesting because a lot of times people come in confident saying that I'm going to be 6 for 6, and it doesn't play out that way at all.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe if you're confident 0 for 6 will surprise you. We'll see. You seem to like sci-fi as a rule more than horror.
Yes, I do.
That said, I would say that all 6 of these movies have elements within them that I would qualify absolutely as horror genre. Mm-hmm. Just furthering my theory that most, if not all, movies are secretly horror movies.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know if really, but that's one of my many theories. People who are dismissive of the horror genre, which I know you're not, but there are people who are, wouldn't even take the time to review, I don't know, White Noise 2. They would miss out on that experience. They would just dismiss it as stupid. That said, I think the movies that we're going to talk about tonight, for the most part, are well heard of science fiction films. There are, as you were mentioning before we started recording, sort of similar themes that are being explored. A lot of them have a very apocalyptic vibe to them, and a lot of them explore themes of madness.
Yes.
So that's cool, but the quality is going to sort of, there's quite a bit of sway in this, at least according to me.
Yes.
Tonight we're going to discuss Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the, I believe, 7th Planet of the Apes movie.
That explains a few things.
Then we have M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, starring controversial superstar Mel Gibson. Dark City. We have Pitch Black. This DVD says The Chronicles of Riddick, Pitch Black. I don't know which title we want to go with.
Pitch Black.
I think it's a better title, personally. We have a more recent sci-fi effort called Pandorum, and we're going to wrap up this episode talking about Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys, which has some Bruce Willis and some Brad Pitt all together in one place. Mm-hmm. So, dark apocalyptic madness-themed sci-fi. Is there anything you would like to say by way of introduction before we jump right into this?
I think we can jump right into it.
Thanks for being here, Susie.
You're welcome.
Our drug allows the brain to repair itself. We call it a cure. We're ready to move on to the next phase. This one.
This is wrong, Will.
This has the potential to change lives.
Some things aren't meant to be changed.
Does it work?
Like we predicted. With one exception. The drug has radically boosted brain functioning.
You mean increased intelligence?
Okay, we're going to talk about Rise of the Planet of the Apes. This is a 2011 pre-make, I guess. As then it's was sort of a prequel to the remake, maybe? Or I guess a prequel to the original Planet of the Apes. I think that the most impressive thing out of the gate, coming from this 2011 blockbuster standards, is the level of the special effects. I remember seeing the new version of King Kong that Peter Jackson directed and just being blown away by the monkey. King Kong himself is just an crazy, amazing effect. This movie has several characters that are all as well rendered as King Kong. It's almost become rote that we can now accept completely CGI characters.
Well, the main ape is played Andy Serkis. So right there, you've got a great model for.
Yeah, of course, on the edge of the wave of this sort of stop motion performance, but it is a performance. It's not completely just an animated creation. I do see Serkis in it. I do see characterizations. I do see performance. So actors don't necessarily need to worry that they'll still have work. I think that obviously Serkis is the best in the business. So having him do it is a big plus and boon for this movie.
Yes.
I think that the two wild cards about the movie is A, how deeply you feel about the Planet of the Apes franchise. I have to say personally, I don't feel that deeply about it.
Nope.
And how you feel about James Franco. Because I want to like James Franco, but sometimes I think James Franco kind of sleepwalks through movies. And I kind of think he sort of slept through this movie. I don't know if he was quite like Oscar, hosting the Oscars, sleeping through this one, but he certainly didn't bring his A game. He seemed to understand that the monkey was always going to be the star. You know? And he's not wrong. The main character of this movie is Caesar. I care way more what happens to Caesar.
Yeah.
But that's the interesting thing. If this is sort of the lead up to why the apes took over the earth, man has to be put out of the way. So we're going to be dealing with really dark things. And it sort of puts us in the position of siding with the monkeys.
Yeah.
The monkeys need to destroy humanity, in fact, are right to do so.
That's interesting because all throughout the movie, it took me about 45 minutes to realize, what is this, a family drama? Because that's what it felt like to me for most of the movie. Even like the fight scenes at the end were great, and that finally brought it around to being sci-fi. Yeah. But it was a family drama. It was all about a coming of age of this monkey.
If you are not completely dazzled by the special effects, and they are very dazzle-worthy, if that's a thing, I do think that, especially, you're right, the first half has some very questionable science, at least very questionable science methodology, and it just doesn't cook as readily as this sort of summer blockbuster that you're expecting to see. You do get the big special effects action sequence at the end of the movie, but it feels like an origin story, and as a rule, origin stories are kind of slower. And I felt that, especially in the first half. But I will say that I did emotionally enough connect with Caesar the monkey.
Yes.
I did get suckered into it. I did feel bad for him when Brian Cox was doing mean things to him. And that kid from the Harry Potter movies is being a dick.
Yes.
But I think that in some ways, I will say it's a good movie, it's an entertaining movie, but overall I think it might have been a little bit overpraised in some things. The scientist bringing a bunch of his teen buddies to have a party in the lab is just an unbelievable plot convenience that we're all just to take on the chin. And there's a few things like that is just, but we got to keep this story moving forward, don't we?
It's all, for me, it's all about how awful the science is. I mean, the placenta, the plot, let's just, the Caesar's mother gets injected with a virus while she's pregnant, and her offspring gets the actual benefit of the virus without going, completely nutso, like seemingly the mom did.
Right.
And all of the other monkeys were put down, and then one of the scientists takes Caesar home and raises him. Secretly, right?
Because secret science is still science.
Right. Especially when you're experimenting on your own father.
Yeah.
But
again, there's sort of a Frankenstein element. And if it was played for the dark moral thing, he brings about the end of the world for this fraudulent science. But that's not how it's played. It's still a noble action, everything that he's doing. And I'd like to say that they are piggybacking a plot element of Deep Blue Sea for this movie in their search for the cure of Alzheimer's. They are making super intelligent, in this case, monkeys, but in Deep Blue Sea, of course, sharks. I think if you're a scientist, mad or not, if your plan involves making super intelligent blank,
it does. Okay,
it's just not going to work out.
The prefrontal cortex is the thing that makes people intelligent and different. It's because our prefrontal cortex is huge. Animals don't have them that big. Right. They can't get that smart. It's just unless you enlarge their brain in the front so that it can actually make the neural pathways. It's not possible for all of these things to have happened. Yeah. The placenta is an amazing organ and filters out viruses. This is part of its job. This is the part that blows me away. And, I'm pregnant right now. This is on my mind. Yeah. This is important to me. So it drives me crazy that the whole setup is erroneous. Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people sniffling and saying you're going to sort of dismiss the science on Rise of the Planet of the Apes. But I wouldn't if they weren't taking it so seriously. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the premise on how everything got started. So how can you build a foundation on something that's fraudulent?
The talking monkeys are more believable than the people. Pretty much wholesale throughout this movie.
Yes.
That's where we've arrived. This is sort of the age of Guardians of the Galaxy, where the two best characters in the movie were not on set, right? We are getting to a place where we can do really impressive animations. That said, there are sequences of this movie where I say, wow, that's really good animation. Like, I'm not out of it. I'm very aware that I'm watching animation, but I'm also aware that I'm watching very good animation. You know, this is not one of the cases where I was going to argue that no, they should have just done monkey suits or they should have done it all practically. No, I think that you needed to go digital, and this was a good use of that medium. So
Yeah.
win in that direction.
Fair enough.
Where do you land on the Franco?
On the Franco, he.
Because it's weird. Every now and then I see him really give a performance, and then there's other times where I'm watching the Spider-Man movies. And
Exactly.
I'm like, what the hell is going on?
All I could think is, where do I know him from? Because he's not that memorable. This is my thing. If he's not that memorable, I mean, it was the main character's name. The credits were rolling, and I'm like, Jeremy, what was the main character's name? Because that's how memorable his performance was. Is I had no idea. I went to IMDb to look it up. Will Rodman.
Will Rodman it was. Yeah,
I had no idea. Even after I heard it, I was like, really? Huh. That's not ringing any bells at all.
Didn't care while I was watching the movie, didn't care afterwards.
Nope.
No, that's it. I think we're being a little bit more severe than we need to with the movie.
But it was my first question. I had no idea what the main character's name was.
Yeah.
He killed his father, for Christ's sake.
The main character was Caesar.
Well, yes, the main human.
Yeah, but the main human was significantly less interesting. And even less interesting than that, how about his girlfriend, whose name Frida Pinto plays her. Carolyn Arana is the character's name. I would like for you to explain to me her contribution to this movie. No, so do you have anything on it? Because
It's part of the coming of age story. Caesar sees Will and love, and that's his first jealousy moment of, I want something more.
Yeah.
I want that.
And I definitely get the sort of monkey being raised in a box. You know, there's a big bad world out there that he needs to be able to jump around in. I get it. You got to throw your feces at something. But
there's the neighbor. He was a really good target.
I'm one of these boys who a lot of the times will complain about an extraneous love story. And I guess I see what you're saying there, but I also feel like her scenes could have been cut, and I don't think it would have hurt the movie particularly. She was a veterinarian. She was cute. There might have been some chemistry there, but it wasn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. If you know, as I did, that this is sort of leading to the downfall of humanity, again, being put in the position of cheering for these apes is kind of interesting. I mean, maybe we have it coming, but is that what we've come to, where we can't even put humanity in a heroic context in a fiction? You know? I actually thought in a way it might have been a cop-out that they went with the ape disease wiping out humanity. I kind of like the idea of the apes actually rising up and taking over somehow, you know? But that's not the movie it was going to be. What I will say is, that, have you seen the follow-up to this, which is Dawn? Yeah.
Good God! Sorry, this is the second Planet of the Apes movie I've ever seen.
Right. Okay.
So, and the original was not the first.
Oh, so you're talking about the Tim Burton catastrophes.
Oh yeah, that one. That's the one.
Catastrophes, I like to call them.
I'm a big fan of Helena Bonham Carter. So there we go.
Giamatti, Tim Roth. There's some really cool people in that movie. That's not good at all.
No. Yeah.
See, this is way better than the Tim Burton.
Yes.
Because I do want to say some nice things about it, because I feel like I'm being more negative than I need to be about it.
Yeah, well, something has to be at the bottom of the barrel of this pile.
You think? Yeah, well, I think it's the first time we're going to disagree then so far. But I think as a technical achievement, it's great. Again, it sort of reestablishes Andy Serkis as the guy to do this sort of story. It doesn't necessarily carry the weight of the apocalyptic vibe, but there's always something keeping me watching. Hey, there's John Lithgow doing a good performance, you know? There's, you know, bizarre sequence involving the apes having this strange confrontation with like the CEO.
Yeah.
Which it's bizarre. Like it's a stare down. It's a stare down thing that must have been orchestrated. Like it's a bizarre scene. There must have been like an ape meeting about this.
Yeah.
It's unclear to me how many apes were in that facility because it seems after the breakout there's suddenly a lot more of them than we've seen.
But they emptied the zoo.
Yeah, that's true.
They emptied they emptied the research facility.
And then they emptied the zoo.
So yes, there was a ton more.
Yeah.
But how did everybody get smart?
We saw him gas the ones in the clinic.
Right, but not the other ones. And Buck was not in the same room. Buck the gorilla, the silverback, he wasn't in the same room to get the virus. So how did he get intelligent? Because he clearly had the green eyes.
He must have been passing out needles. Who knows?
Yeah.
If there are threads to be pulled. But,
yeah.
This is also Rise.
I love
of
Buck,
the Planet
so
of the Apes.
just I'm a big fan of Buck. But
I say it's watchable summertime entertainment, and like I said, compared to the Tim Burton one's masterpiece, the movie that follows this, I think is straight up like good.
Oh,
like
okay.
I think it's actually far outdoes this one. Upon revisiting this one after seeing the sequel, I think it's part of the reason this one felt like a much slower movie because this is just an origin story that's going to set up the real story that's going on in the sequel. You know?
Once I stopped waiting for the sci-fi to kick in, other than the virus, because there isn't and talking apes like that, it's not a big stretch for me to step into sci-fi, and I'm like, oh, this is the coming of age, but origin story is a much better explanation for it. But it's the same thing, right? That's what an origin story is. You're coming of age. You're coming into your power, right?
But considering that their origin is our end, maybe it could have been better than it was.
Yeah. I did, once I got into that, then I actually started enjoying the movie more because I stopped questioning so many things.
And by that time, the explosion.
Yeah, so it was all good.
Make geometric shapes the size of a football field.
What kind of machine can bend a stalk of corn over without breaking it?
Can't be by hand, it's too perfect.
So the aliens can't read our minds.
Oh.
Some animals around the county have been acting funny. Some of them violent. It's almost like they act when they smell a predator around.
Amman, Nairobi, Bangalore, and Jerusalem.
Same shows on every station.
Every station?
It is the 18th reported crop site in that country in the last 72 hours.
I'm a little scared. All this stuff on TV. Joe Gills was in here talking about the end of the world.
They're staying in the shadows. It's called probing to make sure things are all clear.
Clear for what?
For the rest of them.
There's a monster outside my room. Can I have a glass of water?
So good news for M. Night Shyamalan fans out there. By all accounts, this new movie that he's come out with, I believe called The Visit, is not a complete piece of shit. By all accounts, this is a big turnaround for the last several movies of his. But we're not going to talk about any of the recent eggs that were laid by Shyamalan. And I hate to pour it on because the guy gets shit on all the time, but he kind of deserves it a lot of the time. Back in 2002, he was still, as far as Hollywood considered, the new Hitchcock, complete with putting himself in all of his own movies and having a fairly rapid output. He's going to do a movie every year or so, and he's going to write and direct. That's kind of an impressive feat in of itself. Personally, I think that's impressive. He's like a storyteller, and he's definitely committed to it, and he has at least once made an amazing horror movie. I think he came close to making an amazing horror movie again here, but sadly it is snatched away from us just close to the finish line, as far as I'm concerned. That's not to say it's a perfect movie and doesn't have other problems throughout it, but the other major change from 2002 is, in 2002, Mel Gibson was a bankable star. Mel Gibson's name has been so dragged through the mud there that it's really hard not to see just Mel Gibson. And coming to revisit Signs this many years later, it was hard to, really did have to work to get past that. There's that Mel Gibson guy, right?
Yeah, I had the same problem.
The thing is that I don't think he's bad in the movie. I think he's completely decent in the movie. But I still find myself, I had this voice in the back of my head screaming, Mel, 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 the whole time I was watching the movie. It was like really distracting. Honestly, from the Spielbergian construct, the whole J.J. Abrams approach to sort of the wonder and fear, I think that the emotional tone of the movie is dead on. It's dead on. Yep. And I'm like on board with the movie until we get to that fucking third act. But I'm here to get a second opinion. I would love to hear what Susie has to say about M. Night Shyamalan's Signs.
Well, I think that you're right. Time has not been kind to this movie because of Mel's reputation. It was distracting for me seeing that the role of faith in this movie was likely a big reason why Mel chose it in the beginning, because of his own faith. Because he's the preacher who loses his faith and then comes back to it in a big-ass way, right?
Well, revenge and redemption are basically what Mel Gibson does. I mean, a few rom-coms here to the side, it's what he does. And yes, obviously, the director of The Passion of the Christ, probably a religious fellow. But honestly, for me, I've often wondered if for Mel Gibson that it wasn't, for him personally, violence that he was specifically attracted to. Especially if you look at the movies he's directed, with the exception of like The Man Without a Face, all of them are not just violent, but the most violent movies ever. Like Braveheart, Apocalypto, and The Passion of the Christ are just unbelievably violent movies. So here we have Mel not in righteous vengeance. This is a redemption Mel, and reserved Mel, and scared Mel. He's a farmer who's lost his wife, and he was a priest. Obviously, the loss of faith is going to factor into this. But he's an unhappy, depressed man who starts getting crop circles in his fields, and the more he investigates, the more he discovers, the more we see that the rest of the world is starting to notice these things too. We think that this farm might be ground zero of an alien invasion. So that's the basic premise of it.
Yeah, I thought it was well paced, honestly. I think the story unfolded really well. It teased me with all of the things. The scene hit the memory of his wife's death and coming to her prophetic last words as they were. Swing away,
which
Mary.
Sounds just like nonsense as she's drifting off into nothingness.
Yeah.
But has context at the end of it. This is why I really wanted to insist that people pay attention to the spoilers, because I do think a lot of these movies have big twists at the ending, but of course Shyamalan is sort of like known for his twists. I don't mind the religious twist in that respect, in that that's the story they're telling, that's the twist that they're setting up. I think the real problematic twist has to do with the glasses of water everywhere. Do we want to just get to there, or do we want to work our way to the end?
Yeah, we can go there. There, honestly, the rest of the movie I think is really sound. I love the bits with the dogs. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, the kids have to kill one of the dogs because it attacked them, because it's gone crazy from whatever these aliens have done, right?
The teasing that goes on in this movie. There's an absolutely horrifying found footage sequence where the news releases footage of a child's birthday party, where we get our first sort of blurry look at one of these CG alien creatures. And it's creepy. It's genuinely creepy. And I like that it's through the perspective of people huddling around their TV watching a global catastrophe unfold, because that's what you and I would be doing if a global catastrophe was unfolding.
Yes.
So you can identify with this. You don't have to be a rural farmer. Like, if shit this big is going down, everybody's in this sort of catatonic place of like, what are we going to do? And it achieves that really well. And the movie's well made and smart, which is why the fact that the aliens' big weakness turns out to be water is such a bummer.
It is. It is such a bummer. It makes it, you go, what? Why? What? How? 60% water the Earth is.
What level of humidity does it have to be so they won't just melt in the air?
Yeah.
What about the places where it was raining?
Yeah.
What about like if your weakness is water, you would stay the hell away from planet Earth.
Yes.
Your invasion was doomed from the start.
Yes.
She doesn't even need like Little Miss Sunshine, Abigail Breslin, is the adorable little girl in this, and she's leaving water all over the house, and unbeknownst to her, she's just weaponizing the entire place when they have this amazing twist. You can also just spit on them, by the way. That would probably be like a bullet wound.
You know, the human body itself is 85% water. Like, come on.
It's a really, really, really dumb twist.
I'm gonna cut on you and kill you. Like...
And so much else about the movie I like. There's this completely batshit crazy scene where they're in town and Joaquin Phoenix meets this army recruiter who's got it figured. There's this really weird David Lynchy going for off-kilter humor sequence that is like, I don't know what it's doing in the movie, but I'm glad it's a welcome presence.
Yes.
Me, right? The sequence in the closet with the claw reaching down underneath the freaky.
Yes, so much of it, like, it's
if the ending had come through, this might be at the top of the list.
Yep.
That's the real tragedy about science, and why I can't completely write it off. Mel's in it, and he may be a distraction, but he doesn't suck.
No.
The movie works until the last 10 minutes, but the last 10 minutes spoils the meal.
Yeah, it really, really does. I mean, I love the picture in the UFO book that looks like their house with two kids and a male figure laying in the yard with a swing set. Well, we've already seen this is their house. It is their house. It's got the same fan shape on the attic window. Like, and it's so... like that little thing. There's just so many of those moments that make it so beautiful.
Joaquin Phoenix's sort of arc from being in complete denial to wearing the foil in the head and sitting in the closet with the kids.
Yes. Oh, I love... and this is the movie where I'm like, Joaquin can really act. Like, wow, he's great.
Every now and then, right? So, yeah.
I'm with you.
I would have lived with twist number one that God was speaking through his dying wife or whatever, and that, you know, Swing Away was going to get enough for him to fight off the alien and whatever, get his son back. Saving his son would have been a big enough win. They didn't need to discover the key to the killing the aliens, which, by the way, somebody else somewhere in the world had figured out by that point.
Yes. There's a moment, and Mel Gibson's character says... there are two types of people in this world. Those who believe in miracles and believe someone will be there to help them and that there are no coincidences, or those who believe that they're all on their own and no one is watching out for them. And he goes from the latter back to the former because of all of the not coincidences, the asthma, so that the kid isn't breathing in the toxin that the alien puts in his face, the water everywhere from the little girl. The baseball bat hanging on the wall.
Everything was there for him.
Everything. There are no coincidences. I
mean, there's a bit of obviousness to that twist, but I would have taken that.
Yes.
I would have taken that.
Absolutely.
And said, good. Okay, that's the story they're telling here. I'm with you. God versus aliens, God's going to win every time. Whatever. It's actually a very sort of smart thing, because in a lot of ways, to me, alien life would be really hard evidence in a lot of ways against a lot of religious faiths.
Yeah.
Though your whole faith is based around it just being us, other things from other planets kind of fucks with that. So, yeah, rich bed for science fiction. I also have to mention, I know we're going on and on, but there's a scene in here that just, I think is amazing, where he hits bottom. Mel Gibson's character hits bottom, and he believes the apocalypse is upon us, and there's no God, there's no judgment. We're going to be killed by these aliens. So he has a final supper with his family.
It's beautiful.
It's such a good scene.
Oh, yes, it is. And the breakdown and it's so meaty and real.
Everybody has their little moment in it. The dynamics are played out. Who he was is established. Who they want him to be is established. And it's just him trying to say goodbye to his family, because at that point, it's Night of the Living Dead. That whole sequence and like the banging on the doors that follows, I really wanted this movie to close it for me, and it just didn't. But it's that thing that gives me hope when I hear all this good buzz about the new Shyamalan movie. I'm like, well, there was The Sixth Sense, and there was most of Signs. we're going to talk about the director's cut of Dark City. This is from Alex Proyas. At this point, he was mainly known for The Crow, and unfortunately for the death that took place on the set of The Crow. He's known as a visionary director, but kind of a difficult one. And then he's got Lem Dobbs on board as a co-screenwriter, and Lem Dobbs did like the Limey, and he's a cool screenwriter in himself, I think. And David S. Goyer, who's into all of these different comic book adaptations these days. So it's a really interesting mix of people putting their head together, I assume, to try and make the most fucked science fiction film that they could come up with. And what they come up with is Dark City. And it came out in 1998 to mixed reviews and almost no box office. Watching it now, the movie seems so amazingly prescient of where science fiction was going. This is before The Matrix, by the way, right? It's an amazing piece of science fiction as far as I'm concerned, and the fact that it almost floated by unnoticed is really unfortunate. Alex Proyas hasn't, in my mind, come close to, meeting this level of success with his science fiction movies. But because of Dark City, I will watch anything that Alex Proyas brings to the table. I said at the beginning of this, at the introduction, that there's 2 movies in here that I just think are amazing. Well, not to tip my hand too much, I think Dark City is one of them.
Yes, well, I didn't... This is where there is no doubt that Dark City is an amazing film. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. I remember where I was sitting the first time I watched it, in the 3rd row in Place Real, and sitting, and it was a horrible day. I walk into this movie with my boyfriend, who's also really grumpy, and we walk out feeling amazing. We had no idea what it was like. We're like, that movie was really dark.
Yeah.
And we feel great. What is that? Because it's beautiful, beautiful movie.
And in this director's cut version, we have sort of a completed version. It's interesting, the weird parallels. I mean, it's not the same as Blade Runner in content, but in the world building. And in that there's several cuts of the movie. And this cut gets rid of controversial narration. In the theatrical cut, this whole movie starts with the character played by Kiefer Sutherland giving you a brief rundown, or just sort of orienting you in a very basic way. And the movie, by design, is meant to keep you confused. So losing that narration and filling out the scenes, even if they seemed extraneous, it's all the journey in this movie, right? We wake up in this hotel room with this character played by Rufus Sewell. He doesn't know who he is. We don't know who he is. But he's in a bad situation. There's a body in a room, and something has just happened. It feels like someone has just left. He's waking from a bad dream, and he's lost his identity. And his exploration of this world and his journey to find out who he is ours. It's very quick and kinetic. The cutting in it is very fast, and especially in 1998, people weren't used to that. And this movie does not spoon feed you. You just got to take the ride. And if you don't, if you hold back, if you're resistant to it, if your head's in your phone, it's not going to work.
You miss it.
But if you go with the movie, it's amazing.
Yep.
I hate to be so hyperbolic,
but it is. It's this spectacular noir mystery sci-fi movie that just is brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the visuals. Okay. It sort of seems like we're set in an 40s, 50s sort of noir world city, very dark, but familiar. But the fashions sort of spray all over the place, even to the 60s and 70s at the time. And it's a mixed bag. And at first it just sort of seems like an aesthetic choice or an affectation of the movie. But the more we learn about the world, the more we learn why this might be the case. The confusion of our main character and the constantly changing world around him and the rules that constantly change of the world around him is very disorienting until you get that payoff. Now, it's your willingness to wait for it. And while you're waiting, by the way, you're going to encounter some of the creepiest villains I think I've ever seen. The aliens, or the creatures, strangers they call themselves, use our bodies as vessels, as they say, and refer to each other as Mr. Hand and Mr. Book.
And Mr.
And they
Quick.
walk in a very sort of stiff, stilted way. And because it's almost like they're not used to piloting this form of life, you know?
Mostly they just float when they can get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. They don't blend very well at all. Like if they were trying to make a costume to make them sort of blend into the city, no. They're all very creepy. And the more we learn about them, the creepier it is. Everything's on the table here. You could say, is this guy just having a psychotic nightmare? And we're just seeing, since we're so locked into Rufus Sewell's perspective, you know, whatever. Any kind of information that we get from the Jennifer Connelly character. In this genre, we are trained to not trust the dames, right? Dames are always trouble in the noir universe, right? And the other information person is Kiefer Sutherland, who is uncharacteristically fan-fucking-tastic.
Oh, I know, right?
Who gives him information, but who is clearly damaged. We don't
So-
realize, again, how damaged until the script unfurls.
Yes.
We are going to have to get into the spoilers because, I mean, it's just necessary to talk about the movie. But again, if for some reason you're listening to this and you haven't watched Dark City yet,
Who are you?
stop, because we're going to get into it.
Yeah. Oh my God. The first Jennifer Connelly, and you say they're her character, the wife.
Yeah.
And women aren't to be trusted. Well, that's her whole opening line: is she cheated on her? She's the one that had an affair.
Yes.
And she's a singer in a nightclub, really sexy singer. So of course she's had an affair. She's just not trustworthy. She's too beautiful. She's too smart. She goes directly from seeing her husband or finding out about him to going to the police about him.
Yeah.
Like she turns him in, more or less.
There is
without
compelling evidence that he's involved in some murder, to be fair.
to be fair, but there's nothing, she has no loyalty to him.
But has been, like everyone else, somewhat programmed, so it's not even all her fault. She is playing the role that she has been given, and aren't we all? As far as that whole, Keanu Reeves cue the whoa, it beat the Matrix to the entire world around you is a lie, and there is sort of this operating system behind things that is fucking with you. The big twist that we find of the movie is these strangers are indeed aliens, and that Dark City is nowhere on Earth. It's like this spaceship Rubik's Cube that they play with every night, and all the people, all the denizens of Dark City are their little lab rats that they experiment with. Rufus Sewell being the most interesting lab rat of all, because he's eventually, after all this experimentation, started to reject it and starting to lock into his own identity and is starting to try and find his way out to this Shell Beach, which is just another great narrative sort of hook of the movie. Everybody has a Shell Beach, a place that they want to get to, an ideal place that they talk about and think about, but almost never are actually there, right?
They never actually try to get there.
Yeah.
And isn't that a human condition, that we all have these dreams, but we never, how many of us actually step outside of our comfort zone and go somewhere that we have no idea where it is, right?
The slippery reality of the world and how aware or not aware the different characters are. One of my favorite things. I mean, I would have loved the movie anyway, but I think the thing that really makes me love the movie is the character of Bumstead, played by William
know.
Hurt.
I was just thinking about him. He is so, just so intricately woven, every little puzzle in this movie, and he is part of that intricate weaving.
He's just an experimenter away from being Rufus Sewell. He's almost got this figured. He knows that there's something wrong with his world, and that it's bigger than he can just put his finger on, And unfortunately, his revelation, his solving of the case, sort of coincides with his end. But his end also coincides with his freedom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty deep and pretty, spectacularly, conceived. And the visual scope of the movie, of the city changing. There's amazing scenes where the city goes to sleep and Rufus Sewell is the only one who stays awake. All of a sudden, everybody just drops. Everything stops. And the whole idea of that is creepy. The realization of it is creepy. And when they cut to the wide shot of the city and all the trains stop and all the cars stop, that's really creepy. And then you go to the next level and realize that it was all accomplished with miniatures, including the cars and the train in that shot. Those were miniatures.
It's a beautiful, beautiful movie, which is why some of the irregularities stick out to me.
Okay.
One of which, there's got to be a theme here. When the strangers are doing their thing at midnight,
right.
What happens is a face opens up and there's a clock behind it.
Right.
What the fuck is the point of that? There's got to be some imagery, some symbolism in that, because nothing in this movie is really done just for the pretty.
I kind of saw that as sort of the machine that was running the city and starting and stopping time for the denizens of Dark City.
Yes, but why is it behind a face? Why hide it? It's below the city. No humans go there. This is my questioning, because they're down there. They've brought even Dr. Schreiber, Kiefer Sutherland.
More interesting than a bunch of levers and wheels, I guess.
Well, the clock is fine. I like the clock. The clock makes sense to me. It's just, why do you need to? They're very practical aliens. Yeah. Why the show? Yes, because I'm really clear that I'm sure they don't worship a god. So what is the symbolism that's supposed to be there? Because I couldn't easily make it work. And that's one of the things, because they show it several times over, there's got to be something there. There's something missing with that piece for me. And not that this breaks the movie at all. I really had to, I'm like, oh, that's weird. But I noticed it. And the movie is still beautiful, and I still loved it.
Yeah.
Having said that, it still puts me to sleep every time.
Oh, really? You fall asleep during Dark City?
Every time.
Huh.
Even in the theater, I think I fell asleep for a few minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Especially during the fight scene.
I've never had that problem, but I guess I can say I have watched it with people who have fallen asleep during
Yeah, no, it's so
very dense, and I guess it's not something you want to start late, but I think, well, for me, just the momentum of the piece itself kind of drags me through.
Yes, absolutely. And there's that momentum, but there's also, maybe it's just because it is a very dark movie. Up until the final scene, it is a dark movie because it is never daytime in this city. It's called Dark City for a reason. The strangers are averse to the light. Yeah. It's dark. Midnight is actually every 12 hours. It is never daytime.
I mean, I'm trying to look at some negative things to say. I think that for me, the big climactic battle at the end of this that sort of ends thing is a little bit more conventional than I guess I was expecting from such an unconventional movie. But just getting this movie made, as fucked as it is, was an accomplishment of itself. Oh, yeah. And by that point, I'd already loved the movie. Like, they'd have to really signs it hard for me to not really be in love with this by the end of the movie.
Exactly.
I do think, and I'm a fan of Jennifer Connelly, but I had this thing. I would be able to prophesize Oscar winners by saying that they'll never win an Oscar. I remember saying, probably after watching this movie, to somebody like, I love me some Jennifer Connelly. She is so beautiful, but she's never going to win an Oscar. She proved me wrong. I said a very similar thing about Charlize Theron once. She's a beautiful woman, but I don't know if she's ever going to win an Oscar. So I've stopped saying that because I feel like I've got this weird power. Not that she's weak in the movie. I mean, she plays her role fine, but she doesn't distinguish herself amongst all of these other... This is one of the first things I've ever seen Rufus Sewell in, and it would be a tough role to play.
Yes.
For the most part, I have... there's very little that I would change. I was thrilled to hear about the director's cut, and I was glad to have it. There's a little bit more Jennifer Connelly singing, but most of the stuff that was added, I didn't clock it especially.
No.
I was just absorbed in the world.
Exactly. I was hoping you would know what was different because I had no recollection of
There's
what.
There's a few scenes that go on longer than they should. There's not a lot of there's just more. And in a movie as generous as this, I will take it.
Yeah.
He's dead. Captain's dead.
Dropping 20 MB per minute.
You still have 70 seconds to level this beast out.
They were the only survivors on a barren planet with a deadly prisoner intent on escape.
All you people are so scared of me.
But when darkness fell,
total eclipse.
He was the only one deadly enough to fight this kind of evil.
But it ain't me you gotta worry about now.
So in the very first episode of Rank and Review, Susie, I reviewed with your husband a haunted submarine thriller called Below. It was directed by, I'm going to say, David Twohy.
Yes.
Twohy is his name. And this movie we're about to talk about from 2000, Pitch Black, he's also directed.
I actually remember watching Below with my husband and under the covers with it up to my eyes so that I could cover it any moment.
So that one was working for you. Vin Diesel had been around. I think that this is around the time of that Triple X movie too. I think similar. I don't know. I don't have the trajectory of
Triple X came afterwards.
So this is one of the first sort of starring vehicles.
Vin fan here.
You're a Vin fan, okay? Yeah. Well,
not because he can act.
I am not a not Vin Diesel fan, but I will say that for me, my least favorite part about Pitch Black is Riddick.
Oh.
And that's going to be a problem, I know. Like, they're going to build other movies all around Riddick. But this story about a space sort of shipwreck, for lack of a better term, spaceship gets hit by asteroids or something, there's a crash landing, a bunch of ragtag survivors have to group together to survive, and they discover that not only are there creatures that come out at night that can eat you, but that very soon an alignment of planets is going to put the planet in complete darkness and making them helpless. So they have to band together, work together to fight this evil. In the mix, we have this Riddick character who is this criminal who is being shipped from point A to point B, who is, originally the main threat that they feel they have to deal with before the aliens are discovered. And for me, my problem with Riddick isn't that the character himself, is that they take such pains to establish, for me, a fairly believable sci-fi universe. The crash is taken very seriously. The stakes are very high. All of the people being beaten and bruised and surviving in this harsh environment seem to be reacting real. Riddick is in a movie. Riddick always knows that he's in a movie. He does everything but wink at the audience. And he breaks for me the reality that was established in the world. And it's a distraction because the world is really well rendered. The monsters are quite frightening, even though very, very Geiger-esque, very Aliens-esque, but they do the job. But for me, I run out of characters to like pretty quickly in this movie.
I felt that every single character in this movie was actually really human, so flawed. Everybody had secrets. You had a reason to hate them all. You also had reasons to like them all. They're still trying to do their best. The docking pilot, Caroline.
Yeah, Rada Mitchell?
Sure.
Is the main character.
Yeah, the blondie. Yeah. She tries to eject the passengers at the beginning, and she has to karmically overcome this, which she does.
This is one of the elements that I wanted to talk about, but yes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful little arc for her. Everybody is so human for me, and we get...
Would you count Riddick in that? When you say everybody, do you count Riddick?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yes, because he has been painted. We don't actually get to know about Riddick. We see he's sneaky, but all we hear is accounts from Johns about how awful he is, right? He's never given an opportunity to prove who he is one way or another, to prove he's an asshole.
I think he proves he's an asshole. But
yes, but is it because that's what's the expectation of him? Or is it because, is that the expectation? Because as soon as somebody tells him, no, you can't do that, I'm not going to stand here and let you do that because I believe in this. Clearly somebody who can't beat him and physically or stop him in any way.
Right.
So he chooses a different way because somebody hasn't pigeonholed him.
For me, Riddick's quality, the reason that we're supposed to like him is that he's cool and badass.
Well, he is badass.
Yeah.
I think I even wrote badass.
That's it. I'll put you this, because I do think that Rada Mitchell's character basically has to pay, spoilers, with her life for the sin of trying to eject those survivors. If Riddick was in the seat, would he have done anything differently? I argue he would have ejected them the same way because he, like her, is a survivor, and that was the best chance of him surviving.
Absolutely.
And he would have done it and not thought a thing about it. And if Riddick did it, it would be cool. But if she does it, it's a death-worthy sin. She cannot be allowed to live through this movie because she was willing to kill these innocent people to keep herself alive, right?
Yeah, she actually says the line, "I'm not willing to die for them."
That's right.
Yeah, and it's that's a piece. It's so human. We're out for ourselves. Like at a very instinctual level, it's all about survival.
But my point is, in this world, for her to do it, that's a big sin. For Riddick to do it, it's badass.
See, you see it as a sin, but I didn't. She's trying.
I think she's judged very harshly for it, actually.
Yes, she's trying to hide it. She's judging herself. She's beating the shit out of herself for it.
She obviously feels bad about it.
Yes, but why should she? Riddick just has already seen, why the fuck does it matter? He just knows that part already. So he's beyond the guilt of it. So why does that it makes him badass? It just makes him a little bit, it makes him see things. It's just a perspective difference. It doesn't make him less worthy of anything. She thinks she has to die, so she dies.
Oh, you think your heart was in it because she was right at the finish line. I really felt like the movie was expecting that to be a big reveal, but I was like, no, Rhoda's not making it off this planet. Sorry, girl.
Yeah.
No sequel for you.
Well, that was another beautiful thing. It had that nobody's safe feeling to it for me.
Except for Riddick.
Even Riddick, because when it first came out, it was called, there's no mention of how popular Riddick is. Right. It was called Pitch Black.
Correct.
So there was no expectation for anybody to make it out of that.
I was never afraid for him. And again, he was never afraid. I think an argument could be made that the reason that Riddick stays with these people is not altruistic and to save as many people as possible.
No.
But as to staying with the group is his best way to survive. The monsters will busy feasting on them, and I'm badass enough to survive.
Yeah.
Again, his moral compass is just as skewed as anyone else's. He is an anti-hero by definition. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I really got distracted by him sort of breaking the reality for everyone. Like, not only can they not find him, he makes a show of them not finding him. He'll go sit in the lawn chair and sip the guy's drink, right? Who was that for?
That was to prove to Johns that he's better than him.
But no one saw him do that but us. That was a shot for us.
No,
I'm fucking badass, you guys.
I thought the guy whose booze he was drinking saw him and got upset.
I think he saw that his drink was gone, did he not?
Anyway,
the point is like he does circles around these people. He's not threatened by them. He's not particularly seemed that fazed by these creatures, which you'd think would at least be a surprise, like some sort of shift in his, face.
Well, okay, so one, he's been a criminal for how long? And as a criminal, do you show when you're surprised, or is that a bad idea to show weakness?
If a monster jumps out, I think that
did a monster actually jump out at him?
The first time he sees it when he's rescuing Rod and Michelle from being dragged down the tow line underground.
Zeke. When Zeke was killed, he was right fucking there and saw it. So I don't think that he was not surprised because he knew there was fucking something hunting them. So I think he had some preparation, whereas everybody didn't.
I felt like the stakes were felt by everyone but him. Anyway, and this is really honestly not me saying Vin Diesel sucks.
No, I know.
This is me saying that Vin Diesel is actually doing what the script wants him to do. I just take issue with that choice.
Yeah.
Because I think every time he winks at us and does something badass and does a superhero move, I'm like taken out of the reality, and the stakes hurt for it.
See,
and like I sound like I'm being really negative about the movie. That's the thing. I like the movie. I just want to backtrack and say because I've been devil's advocate this whole time.
Yeah.
Like it's well made. The creatures are cool, and as far as a creature jumping out the dark and eating people, it's a great success.
Oh yeah.
I just get distracted by the Riddick character.
I'm really sorry that you got distracted by the Riddick character because I love this movie so much. I loved it when I first saw it. I'm not a fan of horror movies.
Right.
I loved this movie.
Right. Well, in difference for different folks. And again, I don't dislike the movie. I just, that choice seems weird to me. To make a world that seems and feels so real and establish like a gritty reality for everybody But this one guy, it's like he could have been played by a Muppet or a cartoon. He just stuck out for me, you know? And as a result, the guy that I was supposed to cheer for was the guy that I wished would die, but was the one guy who I knew would not.
Yeah.
Him and the kid were the only two people who were like, they're not killing the kid.
They're not killing the kid.
They're not killing...
Well, to be fair, there was 4 kids, and they killed 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. But the precocious kid with a secret.
Yeah.
I mean...
And the holy man.
It is in a lot of ways a dressed up paint by numbers creature features. They have to get from point A to point B. They are attacked. They're whittled away.
Oh yeah.
A core group of survivors are whittled down to a couple, and
they figure out the mystery, and all of that stuff. What I really like,
complicated but very well made.
There's a little nuance there that I picked up on this time with that the creatures have to come out of the caves because the light from their offspring actually will hurt them.
The light from their offspring.
All of the little baby critters that they put in the bottles.
Oh.
Right? They have to come out of the caves. Otherwise, they get hurt.
So they have to wait for night before they can do that. That's a life cycle thing.
Yeah. So anyways, I just thought that was something that I picked up on this time. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Because
nerdy little aside too, the alignment of the planets thing gave me a huge Dark Crystal vibe.
Nice.
I got a big Jim Henson boner all of a sudden randomly in the middle of this movie. No, it's well made. It's well made. It's one of those things that's, again, it's not to the scale of Signs. It's just so close to being really good to me that it becomes frustrating because you're that close for me,
Yeah.
For you, it got there. For me, it's just about there.
Yeah.
And I would almost rather it not be that close, Like, it's just like,
I know. It's so infuriating when things get that close and you can't have the piece of pie. Yeah.
That's where I landed Pitch Black. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I don't think so. I think I'm good.
All right. Sorry, Ben.
Don't move. You just wake up.
Yeah.
You'll never make it.
Those things out there.
They didn't seem human. They're fast. They're stronger than you know. If they come after you, run. If you run and you don't look back. Help me!
What's happened to us?
We're becoming like them.
Oh my God.
My wife. I'm gonna find her before those animals do.
Can't assume that help will be coming. Is that your blood?
Some of it is.
What happened to the passengers?
There's something wrong with them.
They were hunting.
How do you think you would react if you knew the truth?
Okay, in 2009, this Pandorum movie comes out. It's directed by Christian Albert. I'm not familiar with anything else that he's done. There's, I think, a Renee Zellweger thriller called Case 49 or something like that I haven't got around to seeing. What I will say about it, for a director I'm not familiar with, he's got a good visual eye. I think that the movie does look really cool. And similarly, you said there's sort of a similar theme going through the movies. There's the establishment of a character, in this case, Ben Foster, who wakes up in this cryotube and has to peel a layer of skin off himself and take these tubes out of his body, sort of reminiscent of Neo in The Matrix. And much like Rufus Sewell in Dark City, as he discovers the world that he's in, we discover the world that he's in. And we sort of have that same initial disorientation. And it's another one of these journey movies. I will say that this is a much less rewarding journey than the one we give with Dark City, in that I think what this movie suffers from for me is that it is a collision of ideas from other movies. You can almost sort of piece little things like this together. Point A goes into slot B here. Basically, this spaceship we have is like an arc of humanity. In this story, we have not mastered a way to go to light speed. If we want to travel somewhere in space, it's the long haul, so the people are asleep. And they're waking up, seemingly one at a time in random intervals, and they seem to be in a void. They obviously haven't reached their destination. They're not ready to populate any sort of life-giving planet, but Where are they? Who are they? And what are these creepy creatures that we seem to be encountering on the ship? Dennis Quaid is one of the characters that we're introduced to early in the movie, who is sort of taken the leadership role, but we have reason to suspect everybody. We got elements of sort of possibly alien human hybrid creatures, we've got space craziness, and we've got very rich production values and this sort of cyberpunk feel to it. But I couldn't help but feel like it was a bunch of pretty people playing make-believe at some point. I like Ben Foster as an actor. I know him as the exposition machine from 30 Days of Night. That's death coming. That guy is sort of like, really seemed to relish that sort of very familiar role. And I like him. And as a rule, I like Dennis Quaid. He is kind of Dennis anything for $1 Quaid, but there's a reason he's been around for decades, because he's a solid actor.
He is solid, yeah.
But once I get to sort of the sort of creature effects and the sort of action beats to the movie, I felt myself caring less and less about what was going on. I wish I could put my finger on the button scene that turned me, or where the worm turned for me, but it did.
It does. It's a decent movie, but that's the best I can give it. It has some really great parts, some good scenes that are really visually wonderful and creepy. The alien things are creepy.
Weird looking, yeah.
They're creepy. And it's got some good thrills, some good scares in it. Well, for me. And yet, when I watched this, by the end of it, I was mocking it. And and I tried to remember, I can't even remember why I was.
Where did it go wrong? I think one of the more obvious things, and again, we're going right into twist territory, but the space madness thing with the Dennis Quaid character did not work for me. And you knew something was hinky about the guy who he sort of finds birthed out of these pipes, because he didn't wake up like everyone else. What was he doing up there? Like right away, all sorts of flags went up. And I think it was, it wasn't as smart as it thought it was as far as that.
Yeah.
But that undercut the actual genuine reveal about where this ship actually was. And I thought that was a pretty good reveal. But by the time I got that payoff, I'd already kind of unplugged somewhat emotionally from the movie.
There was something in that dynamic. I stopped caring. Oh, they're both fucking crazy. Oh, they're the same person. Oh, and I mean, Gallo is his actual name. But the actor is, I recognized him so much. He played that role well enough for me to not recognize him from a movie that I've seen at least a dozen times.
Gallo's sort of this movie's Tyler Durden, right?
Yeah.
He's the character who's there but not really there.
Who's there but not really there, yeah.
Just to orient the listeners.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I actually reference 12 Monkeys in that this crazy, I liked it better.
Right.
This crazy than the crazy that came with 12 Monkeys.
Oh, really? Okay.
I thought it was much more well done. When he's finally giving himself a shot to help himself feel better, they're struggling, him and this other character, and all of a sudden the arms merge into one for the shot to go in.
Right.
And they're the same character. It was a good way to play that out, just how crazy this guy is.
Yeah. And again, beats of the movies I really like. I like the story of the captain who went crazy and jettisoned an entire population of people out into space. Like, that's a really horrible sort of Twilight Zone-y idea embedded in the middle of this. I think what I was less groovy on were the sort of, I guess we can say it, it had been there for so long that some of the people that woke up have actually sort of developed, and over millennia it would seem that they're people that have grown into these hunters. But they look like video game creations. They remind me of Reavers. Mm-hmm. And I like Reavers, but it doesn't make sense that people would naturally develop into Reavers. I didn't particularly buy that. And there's something about this guar rock and roll aesthetic that didn't seem genuine. I mean, it would be cool. The idea is cool. What would we evolve into if we were basically forced to evolve in a tin can? But I don't believe that's what it would be. I don't. I don't, yeah. And that's a tough sell. It looks cool, and it's totally, from a marketing perspective, what the kids would want to see. But
it seemed like the formula should have worked, but it didn't really.
Yeah.
And I mean, my comment at the end, I mean, well, it's a good thing they were pointed in that direction. Otherwise, they would have hit the floor and died. Like that. I mean, why would I need it? It's just decent.
Yeah. I think as cool as it is to wake up with the Ben Foster character and sort of find the orientation there, by doing that, we lost the stakes. And the stakes this is sort of Battlestar Galactica, right? This is the last hope of humanity. If this ship crashes, if everybody on board is reduced to these creatures, that's it for civilization. But because we don't have that, we don't feel the weight of it until it's sort of revealed to us as a plot point later in the movie. And by that point, we're already distracted by other things.
And maybe that's just the whole point. It was just, it was too complicated. Yeah. One of the things that I really liked, honestly, about Signs was that it was simple, and we got really great character development out of that. The plot being simple. The plot was complicated.
Yeah. And I don't think quite as smart as it thought it was. Like I said, I totally saw the Dennis Quaid's going crazy, and it reminded me of the Michael Biehn character from The Abyss. I was constantly recognizing scenes from other better movies. You know what I mean? And this is not uncommon. A lot of movies suffer from this, but this is an amalgam of other movies. Event Horizon came to mind a few times. It's space cyberpunk horror, and I think that there is an audience for it, but I just found myself wanting to like it more than I did.
Yep.
I do want to say something that worked for me, and I think a key mystery, and one of the only things that I didn't figure out. I figured out who the monsters were. It seemed pretty obvious that it wasn't invading, that they were already there. I figured out the Dennis Quaid thing. But what I didn't get and was quite intrigued by was this whole thing that out all the windows and through the sensors is just nothing. It was just a void. It's just black outside the windows. And they didn't know where they were. They traveled so far beyond space that it wasn't space anymore. It was just like a void. And I was really like, that makes the stakes kind of like crazy. Like even if they win, they lose in that. And I was genuinely surprised that out of desperation, when they start firing the chutes out, that the ship has crash landed and has been underwater this whole time. So when the pods ship out, they actually surface in a breathable atmospheric planet.
The planet they were traveling to.
They had been there and probably had been there for who knows how many thousands of years before he was figuring it out. But the crazy captain wanted to, play with his rats in his maze. It's really a microcosm in Dark City from his perspective in a lot of ways. Only he becomes the strangers, right? But again, it's just a piece borrowed from another movie that's way better than this one.
Yep. I
feel like I'm just saying the same thing over and over again and being really mean to Pandorum. It's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, but it's not great.
It's not great. It's decent.
You're a very good observer, Cole.
We have a very advanced program, something very different.
An opportunity to reduce your sentence considerably.
And possibly play an important role in returning the human race to the surface of the Earth.
No license, no prints, no warrants. Well, he took on 5 cops like he was dusted to the eyeballs.
What year is this?
What year do you think it is?
1996.
That's the future, James. Do you think you're living in the future?
I'm simply trying to gather information to help the people in the present trace the path of the virus.
We're not in the present now.
This is a place for crazy people.
I'm not saying you're not mentally ill. For all I know, you're crazy as a loon.
The Army of the 12 Monkeys, they're the ones that spread the virus.
Monkeys.
You've been living in a meticulously constructed fantasy world, and that world is starting to disintegrate.
You haven't become addicted to that dying world.
So, before we start talking about 12 Monkeys, I have to confess a personal bias.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big fan of Terry Gilliam. As a director, as a member of Monty Python's Flying Circus, as a person and a creative individual in the world, I like Terry Gilliam. And so I come into Terry Gilliam movies wanting to like them. And the thing about 12 Monkeys, in a way, is this is, until he did The Brothers Grimm, I guess, the most Hollywood thing, at least on the surface, that he's ever done. It stars Bruce Willis, for God's sake. And he's sort of, it seems like the central action role that he's done so many times he can and does sleep through nowadays. But here we have a story about a future world after the Earth has been devastated by plague, which is sending it's not really clear if he's an inmate or if that's just how bad life sucks for people underground. But he is volunteered, in quotation marks, to be sent back in time to try and find ground zero of the plague and see if they can do anything to find a cure so that they can reclaim the surface. But it's all done through this perspective of Terry Gilliam's sort of mad circus. It does play into the themes of the movie. In fact, the idea that he might be going mad, James Cole, the Bruce Willis character, actually becomes a comfort to him from time to time. It would be so really great for him to just be able to say, no, I'm just a paranoid schizophrenic. The fate of the world does not actually rest on my shoulders. But as we inevitably see, the fate of the world does rest on Cole's shoulders, and he has a destiny to fulfill. And the sort of circular nature of the movie brings us to its inevitable conclusion. It's sort of a springtrap of a movie in that it's very specifically, tightly built to get us to a point of conclusion. That sounds really obvious. There's I'll just say go right to the spoiler because I'm trying to.
You have to.
As a child, Cole witnesses his own death. This becomes increasingly obvious as the movie progresses, but that's the big reveal. We are sort of seeing the events that leads up to this character dying, and we have to sort of decide: was his death worth it? Was it a success? Dark territory. The movie's also quite funny. The movie's also quite exciting, and the movie also possesses a quite manic performance from Bradley Pitt, which was actually Oscar nominated for this, controversially to some people, for this movie. I think it's wonderful. I really am a fan of 12 Monkeys, and I went in, even though I was a fan of Terry Gilliam, a little bit worried because I thought I knew what I was stepping into. And as it turns out, I had no idea what I was stepping into, but I was delighted. By the look on your face, I feel we may disagree.
I think we may disagree. I don't even know where to start. One, this movie really does center on, am I crazy? Like, it feels like the center of it all. For almost every character has to ask themselves that question. Am I crazy? And it's totally played up. The camera angles, everything feels crazy. You feel unsettled watching this movie. It is not supposed to be settling, right? So it does that very well. I just don't get the point of the movie. Like, is there a point? I'm used to there being a point. What is this story actually trying to tell us? If it's just a circle, is that all there is? Are we just doomed to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again? And can we not get off?
I definitely think it's much more of a hero's journey than it is maybe pure sci-fi to that respect. But it's basically his fate is to be shot and killed in that airport. But we do find out that what he did there did count. Through what he did, they understood who started this, and they would at least be able to get a sample of the ground zero of the plague so that they might in the future be able to reclaim the surface. We are led to believe in movie language that he was successful in leading them to the David Morse character. And that was his mission, and that will presumably eventually save the world. But the mission seems so impossible and the stakes are so high, and the constant disorientation of being shifted around through time makes the Bruce Willis character A, kind of want to be crazy, and B, act like a crazy person. When he, fucking pulls a tooth out of his head because he believes that's how the people in the future are tracking him.
And he's not wrong!
That's the thing, but to the rest of the world, this is a schizophrenic acting completely fucking crazy. But he's not wrong. And that's the whole character that Madeline Stowe kind of represents. Her journey is, this guy is crazy too. Holy shit. This guy is not at all crazy.
Yeah. So, and you think that we are led to believe that the people in the future actually figured it out.
Absolutely. The last thing we see is one of the future doctors on board the plane.
Right.
David Morse.
Right. Okay.
So they knew that it was the guy with the ponytail. He had the concoction. If they have a sample of the virus in its purest form, in theory, they can...
But it was that But it was one of the scientists, how many years before?
Well,
because she's old.
They'd obviously sent the scientists back to get the actual sample, right?
I don't think it's that obvious at all.
You don't think so?
No.
Because she was one of the people that sent Bruce Willis. She was one of the people that was sort of wagging her finger.
Yeah.
So the only reason that she would be in that timeline is that she had been sent back. Your argument that she happened to be on that plane?
Everything else was a coincidence.
No, I honestly, I think we just disagree on that plot point. There's no reason for her to be on the plane.
There was no reason for Bruce Willis to be on the airport. As far as I could tell, they went into the airport and left with no extra people going missing.
I'll accept the coincidence of Bruce Willis seeing himself get shot down because that's the sort of circle of the movie. But piling it on with the other people from the past, I don't know. I disagree with that. I think in movie language, that's saying that he was successful. They know, because the misdirection of the movie is they think it's the Brad Pitt character.
Right, through the whole movie, which is also infuriating because if you start at the beginning, he's a fucking moron. This Brad Pitt character, he is, and I don't even think he plays it well. It drives me crazy. He's like he's proving that he can act. Yeah. Right?
Well, whether or not he was worthy of an Oscar nomination, I won't argue. But I will say that the character he's playing is a fool. He's a rich, spoiled child who happens to be mentally ill. He fits the bill of someone who's crazy enough to, intentionally start this plague. I understand why they would think he was a suspect, but that's the misdirect. We like Brad Pitt because he's Brad Pitt and he's in this Twitch. A lot of people like Brad Pitt. I know you apparently hate his guts, but I
liked him in Thelma and Louise, and that's it.
Are you really going to bring about the end of the world? Are you so crazy that you're going to do this? And I kind of thought it was a cool reveal that what his plan was to release all the animals from the zoo. And that's why we saw the weird wildlife that we did in the center of New York or at the beginning of the movie, why there was a lion there, right?
Yeah, we did.
That was because he released him from the zoo. The past, does have echoes in the future. And that was the misdirect. We thought that he was going after Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
He was going after David Morse. And by seeing this future woman on the plane next to David Morse, I think the message is he was successful. Until that point, movie language, they thought it was Brad Pitt.
Yes. So you've mentioned it several times how circular this movie is. And that's exactly what it felt like. Like there was no way off of this loop. There was no way.
That's a great philosophical argument. There was no way to end with
that. It felt like a hamster wheel for everything involved. Like everything was total chaos. Nobody had any actual control over this situation. And there was just this perpetual loop of repeating all of the same mistakes from the past.
Well, but it was a loop in that he saw himself be shot. And by that, Providence, movie language again dictates that inevitably that will happen. Arguably, there's nothing that Bruce Willis could have done. All the decisions he would make was going to inevitably lead him to that. But it's not like the big wheel that's happening over and over again. His great sacrifice, that death, is what was going to give the earth back to the people.
But it wasn't a great sacrifice. He didn't need to die. He didn't. In no time,
It sucks that he died.
Yeah.
But he obviously didn't need to die.
Yeah, it was no great... his death actually accomplished nothing, though. Right? You say it was a sacrifice.
He was running after the guy in the ponytail when he was shot down by security.
Right.
So when the people in the past thought, why was he running after the dude with the ponytail?
No, Jose came back and told him, gave him the gun. And he says, who do I shoot? Jose knew. Jose knew at that point.
Oh, he was trying to shoot the David Morse character.
Why did they try to get him to change it when that was never their goal? Why did they it was never their goal. They were very clear about wanting to get a pure sample of the virus so that they could cure the future. They weren't trying to change the past, so why did they
can't change the past. That's sort of what's established with the timeline, right?
Yeah.
I think from the moment that he opens it in the security bay at the airport and smells it and the security guard smells it, that's it. The plague is going to happen.
Yes, absolutely. So why does Jose come back to give him the gun? Is it just to perpetuate the story that they knew nothing about? Because they didn't know details. All of the records were gone. right? They had so little information. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, okay, so you just... I don't know what you're arguing. What is your ending of the movie?
Honestly, it's a tragedy. It feels like a Shakespearean tragedy to me.
Yeah.
Like star-crossed lovers. That's what it ultimately felt like to me.
Well, I mean, it is a tragic hero. He does die at the end. But we know it's established that it's a Carlito's Way kind of story. We start at the end, right?
Yeah.
Again, I think that the death counts for something. You're arguing that it doesn't, that it was a pointless death, and that's the whole movie is. I have to disagree that that's what the screenwriter and Terry Gilliam was going for, because I don't know what the point of that would be.
Well, this is my question. I don't know what the point of it is. I can't see it.
Well,
my
point would be that they didn't do that. So either.
But your explanation doesn't make sense to me either, though.
No. I don't think they were trying to make a pointless movie. I don't think they deliberately made a pointless movie. Okay, we can argue about the ending. Obviously,
it's just, for me, it's obscure. Either you're trying to do something that's over the heads of your audience, which because I have never gotten what you're getting out of it, what you've explained to me. I'm like, where the hell is that coming from? And I'm not, particularly unable to problem solve and figure out new.
Well, I'm not trying to write my finger.
No, I'm not. It's just that I this is the problem that I have with this movie and why I'm not in love with it.
As a rule, you don't tend to react well to super negative endings, too, as a rule, do you?
I'm not sure.
Because if the moral of the story is that everybody dies at the end and all of this was pointless, yeah, I would agree with you. I just don't think that's the moral of the story. And if we go to the other stuff in the movie, there are other journeys you can latch onto. I think that Madeleine Stowe, who was an underused actress just generally, because I think she's really good, her sort of journey from, for lack of a better word, skeptic to believer, is very, very interesting. And she has every reason, everybody around her would believe that she's crazy, but she believes this guy. And we believe it through the movie. And that really works. I think the misdirection with Brad Pitt and Christopher Plummer really worked.
I really like the characters, like the two main characters, Madeline and Bruce. Their chemistry, their performances together, I thought it really worked. Yeah. I think a lot of things in the movie really worked. Like I said, the unsettling thing, it did its job. I was unsettled. Yeah. I wasn't sure of what was going on for the entire movie, right? And trying to piece things together. There's a lot of... I can see why you like it.
Yeah.
I'm just not in agreement.
There is something about Gilliam's work that is just on the edge of chaos, and I will totally concede that. I mean, I'm a big fan of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and a lot of people find that movie to be nails down a chalkboard. I do think that there is something aesthetically, intentionally disorienting about Gilliam, and that's just where I end up. I think that in the end, despite all the Gilliamness of it and the madness and the layers of it, it is in a lot of ways a fairly, you could thin it out into a summer blockbuster type of scenario movie, but because it's Gilliam and because it's told with this sort of madness, it becomes more than that. It elevates it to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, is that chaos level and that unsettlingness. I think I'm less okay with that piece than the bad ending, because I'm okay with a bad ending. I'm okay with almost everybody dying or everybody dying, if that's what the story calls for.
so here we are. We've gotten over the fight about 12 monkeys. We both applied bandages to our physical and emotional wounds. So yes, the more we've talked, the more I've started to believe that we're going to go 0 for 6. But then you just said that now you think that maybe we're not going to go 0 for 6.
I don't think we are. Okay.
Well, we'll find out. What was your least favorite of these 6 super dark science fiction movies, and why?
Pandorum, because it was the least memorable.
Fair enough.
Next, 12 Monkeys. So, yeah, that's probably in a very significantly different spot than on your list. I think that I don't need to rehash why that one's in that spot. Number 4 is Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It was like I said, once I got over what I was expecting it to be, to watch it what it was entertaining.
Right.
Then we've got Signs, because that big plot hole in the middle, the rest of it was still better than these other movies.
Right.
And then we go Dark City as number 2. And it's just the piece of it that I can't put my finger on, that, why am I falling asleep? Why? And just, there's so many beautiful things in it, but I just like Pitch Black more.
Okay. Well, I will say this. We're not going 0 for 6 or 6 for 6.
Like I said.
I would take much less issue with you putting 12 Monkeys in 5th position than I do with you putting Pitch Black in number 1. I'm sorry. I know. That's one of those things where, I'd like to, I could sort of see where you're coming from, but right now in my brain, that's just fucking crazy. So that's as much as I can sugarcoat it for you.
Good.
But I'm sorry. In Larryverse, 12 Monkeys and Dark City are so obviously much better than Pitch Black that it kind of blows my mind. But that's okay. We're allowed to disagree.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful. You have your own opinions. I have mine. But obviously, no. But we did absolutely agree that in 6th position is Pandorum.
Yep. And that's why I said that I didn't think we were going.
It's a flavorless mint. Really, I keep on seeing stuff that I should like more than I like, and there's good beats in the movie that don't see connected to other beats in the movie, but I watched this whole movie and it just washed over me. I was worried about losing plot points when we were doing the review, and I've seen it twice. It made no impression, and it was really trying to make an impression.
It really was.
But clearly in 5th position is Pitch Black. So that's where I washed up with Pitch Black. Very competently made creature feature, but undermined by unnecessary comedy and macho-ness that sort of undercut the suspense that was working, That's just where I land on that. In 4th position, the amazingly well-made but undeniably flawed Signs. That fucking water twist is just too lame to let go. I want to just say, yeah, it's stupid, but the rest of the movie's good enough. And I honestly think, if it's on TV or if you're on a plane or something like that, you can do a lot worse than Signs. You really,
Yeah.
Especially with, the stigma of Mel Gibson. But it could have been a contender. It lands in 4th place, which makes it a surprisingly high placement for Rise of the Planet of the Apes. For as negative as it sounded like I was being about the movie.
Yeah.
I do think it's a technical achievement, and I do think that Andy Serkis is just an interesting... He's right on the edge of what, future acting is going to be increasingly more like, I think. But we'll be able to bring more characters to life than we ever imagined into a deeper way, and it was way better than I imagined a prequel to Planet of the Apes would be, but I'm just not as passionate about the series to get super excited about it. It's a good gateway drug to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which I thought was legitimately high-stakes fun. It was a pretty good action-adventure movie. So maybe an artificial high for Rise of the Planet of the Apes in 3rd position. But I sweated over 1 and 2, and in the end I put 12 Monkeys in 2nd place. It is controlled chaos. It is Gilliam doing what Gilliam does. In a way, it's a conventional story, and in a way, Gilliam is sort of doing what you'd expect Gilliam to do. But for me, that played out well. I usually don't get excited about big budget science fiction movies starring Bruce Willis. I will refer you to my review of The Fifth Element for that. But
another one of my favorite movies of all time.
I love 12 Monkeys. I do. And in first place, obviously, Dark City. I just think that of all these movies, it had the most new in it. It kind of leads to a very conventional place, and in a way, the Rufus Sewell character has become the one in much the way Neo becomes the one in The Matrix a year later. But I think Dark City slipped by some people, and it should not have.
It should not have.
It's fucking fantastic.
It is.
It is. It's sci-fi, damn it.
Yeah.
Dark sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much
You're welcome.
for coming and doing another episode of Rank Review. I hope I wasn't too severe in my reprimanding you there. We can disagree. It's just that I really disagree.
I know.
But that's part of the fun. And so we come to the end of a fairly argumentative, but I think enjoyable episode of Rank and Review. I hope you guys like that, and if you have any feedback to give me, please do so by writing rankandreview@gmail.com, ranknreview@gmail.com. My name's Larry Parsons. I'm your host and Random Canadian. I just wanted to thank everybody for listening to the show, and by all means check out the website at rankandreview.ca. We got an alphabetical list of the movies we've reviewed, all of our back episodes, and drop on by, say hello. Until next we speak.